Hello everybody and welcome back to Spacedock. I'm Hojuana and today we're covering refits, rebuilds and upgrades, which are done so any given vehicle, aircraft or ship can keep doing its job in the face of ever-advancing technology. Those three words can mean slightly different things in slightly different contexts. An upgrade generally implies adding new things to an older hull. A refit implies replacing things the hull carries, and a rebuild implies just that, rebuilding the hull to a newer standard. They're also all very much linked together. An upgrade might happen alongside a refit, or a rebuild gets required when too many upgrades have been applied. There's only so much that a chassis can carry after all, and add-on upgrades are going to be less efficient than tech integrated into the core design. All of these are done for a variety of reasons. They're a way of saving money versus developing whole new vehicles during peacetime, or if you're a poorer nation. They can be a way to test new technologies in the field. They can also be a temporary solution if new vehicle programs get delayed, as was the case with the later versions of the M60 tank. This is far from a new idea as well. The Age of Sail had razaying, where ships of the line had their upper deck of guns removed, and the ship was literally cut down in size, done to turn them into more stable and maneuverable frigates. This was also done in the face of enemy advancements. As enemy ships got bigger and more heavily armed, smaller ships of the line were simply not suitable for a line of battle, so they were cut down and had their role changed. While there are the obvious changes that can take place, like installing the latest and greatest missile launchers or whatever onto a ship, introducing new technologies into aircraft a ship is meant to carry has a knock-on effect onto those carriers. The biggest change here in real life was the jet engine. Aircraft that could fly faster needed longer runways for takeoff and landing, and combined with the ever-increasing size and weight of fighters, many existing carriers after World War II were no longer fit for purpose. Some were decommissioned, but others underwent extensive modernization. The American Essex class is by far the best example of this, as they ended up in service until the 90s. Just look at this picture of their rebuilds through to 1960 and see how dramatically the class changed. Their obsolete heavy gun turrets are removed, aircraft elevators are enlarged or changed position, the entire deck changes shape dramatically as the concept of angled runways was introduced, and the catapults were improved. The front of these ships changed too, moving from this old open stepped deck arrangement to the modern looking enclosed hurricane bow. It's almost unbelievable how much these vessels changed. These pictures are of the same ship. Refits can also be a way for whole classes of vehicle to grimly cling on to relevance in the face of advancing technology, as is the case with the battleship. The Iowa class underwent a modernization program that added things like point defense turrets and cruise missiles to the old gunslingers as a bit of a stay of execution, but battleships were obsolete. The role the reactivated Iowas dubiously held during the Cold War was not enough to justify their continued existence after the collapse of the Soviet Union. There's a parallel to be drawn here with the last of the sailing frigates of the US Navy. The new technologies were steam-powered screw propellers and big guns with explosive rounds. The former allowed for greater flexibility than sails, and the latter absolutely devastated wooden hulls. This led to some frigates being cut down and rearmed. These ships became faster, stronger, and cheaper to field due to needing less crew. An all-around improvement, but steam power soon took over, and some sailing ships were also converted to run on it. You may think it's odd to have both sails and screws, but coal was hard to supply and also expensive. That's enough about real life though. What about fiction? Well, the motion picture Enterprise in Star Trek is the first obvious one to mention, codifying into the lore of a setting that the practice of improving and updating a visual style was actually a refit. But there have been more functional updates to ships, like the Discovery being updated to 32nd century tech, or the NX with the secondary hull that eventually found its way to canon. The Expanse has a lot too. The Rocinante gets a fake paint job disguise, then a railgun and landing gear, and finally the proto-molecule based armor plating. The bigger thing though was Behemoth, which went through some drastic changes. First, it was built to be an interstellar generation ship for the Mormons. Then it got a hasty refit to turn it into an enormous warship. Then after the rings all opened, it changed role again to become a station in the slow zone. In general, belter ships are cobbled together and armed using all sorts of odd stuff, and such scrappy salvaged gear is common to see in pirate factions as well, like in Star Sector. Which brings me to games that often allow extensive customization of your ships. There can be drastic changes in capabilities with new weapons, adding or removing flight decks, or changing its engines and protection. Or upgrades can be a way to show progression. These can also be plot or choice related, even if the focus of the game isn't really on the spaceships, like the upgrades you got for the Normandy in Mass Effect 2, like the Phalanx cannon or improved shields. Galactica and the Jupiter class as a whole undergoes a big change in Deadlock, and there's the odd things that happen with its armament in Blood and Chrome. And while it's not quite the same, it ends up being changed again when it's turned into the museum ship we all know and love. As we can see, refits happen to big ships a lot, but it's less often that we see these continuous upgrades done to fictional fighters or ground vehicles, which are usually fully replaced by something new. Battlestar Galactica may seem like it does this because of the Viper family, but some Raptors get outgunned. To its credit, Star Wars does have sub-model improvements like with the T-65 X-Wings, though we do also get the T-70 and T-80 in the New Republic era. The TIE fighters in the sequel movies embody this much better though, as the TIE FO and TIE SF are both pretty much just the original TIE design but brought up to a new standard. Back to big ships, and the Imperial class Star Destroyers are a bit of a missed opportunity. Very few of the original Imperial 1s got updated to Imperial 2s, and those that did possibly didn't even get upgraded to the full Imperial 2 standard. However, the Victory 2 class Star Destroyers were very much part of a refit program. Massive kudos to the writers for the Star Wars RPG on these, especially the idea that the program wasn't fully successful in fixing the problems of the first Victory class. It's details like this that give a lot of life to the backstory. While the Victory class may not have been great at its job, in real life sometimes something is just so well suited to what it does that upgrade programs can keep it in that role for decades or even a century, as with the projected life of the B-52. Since its job is to just carry stuff, the technological improvements that come with time have also been applied to the stuff that it carries. Dumb drop bombs became smart gliding bombs, able to hit things with precision from extremely far away. Not to imply that the buff hasn't had its own changes. It's undergoing improvements to its engines right now, and historically it's had payload bay improvements and the defensive armament completely removed in favour of electronic warfare equipment. A perfect demonstration of the changes in how bombers are operated, and the effects that has on existing bomber designs. It's not often that you see things in real life lasting as long as the B-52s are intended to, let alone in fiction. It does happen though, as with the Miranda class in Star Trek, which lasts well over a century. Apparently Starfleet felt that they were just too good at whatever they did to get rid of them, though perhaps their appearance should have changed a bit more over time. Refits, rebuilds, and upgrades are a deeply ingrained part of real-life weapons development, and examining the way real-life vehicles, aircraft, and ships have evolved and changed throughout their lifetimes is fruitful ground for inspiration. Whether they're done by the richest nations to stay on the bleeding edge of development, or by the poorest nations bringing new life to obsolete equipment, it's all done for the same reason: technological progression. So it's really not a surprise that technologically stagnant settings don't have refits that much, though they can still be included to lend some grounded realism and authenticity to even the softest of sci-fi. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate and spacefighter design reference books. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.